I'm Morgan, and that's Maddie.
Yep.
We are cousins, so we grew up our entire lives, so we've kind of always had this, I guess, paranormal stuff with us.
Yeah. So my name is Mark Keyes. I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, and that is a resolution-based group. And by that, I mean we actually try to identify what's causing a haunting, and then we try to resolve it. So working with an extremely skilled psychic medium, we try to connect with whatever might be in a location and basically release it from there, get it out of there. So I have 25 years prior experience as a Pennsylvania criminal investigator with the state police, and that's basically a detective.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of work with the state police, retired from there. I got into the paranormal long before I retired, but I kind of set up the way we investigate our cases just like a criminal investigation, because the reports what we were getting were stuff like intruders in the house and what do I want to call it? I guess like how people were finding their house in disarray. They might come home and things were scattered all over the place. People were reporting being assaulted by like unseen entities or even seen entities, items missing, stuff like that. So a lot of the complaints we were getting really were like police reports. So, you know, in order to kind of keep track of evidence and how we document stuff and the way we collected information, we wanted to set our team up just like we were running a crime scene. So, you know, it worked out good, but I have a background in psychology also. So I like to take a little psychological look at how people interact with hauntings, how they respond to them, stuff like that.
Yeah. I read a little bit about that on your website, and like we thought that was really cool how you are a retired like detective. So it was cool to see that that's how you guys approach all of these hauntings and things.
Yeah.
So we thought that was really interesting.
All right. So my first one is, how did you choose this line of work?
Well, I almost think it chose me, as weird as that sounds.
Okay.
When I was young, I mean, 10 years old, I had a very, I don't know, I want to call it benign, but it really was a small experience comparatively to what some people go through. I was alone, and one of my chores when I was younger, actually I was about 12 years old, was to cut our grass. And I live in a very rural area growing up, so I was all by myself, nobody else was home, and plain as day, I heard somebody right behind me yell my name, and it startled me because I thought I was alone. So I turned around and absolutely nobody there, which kind of freaked me out even more. But, you know, I thought, all right, maybe it's just some ambient noise, maybe it's my mind, you know, just playing tricks on me, something like that, kind of blew it off. But the same thing happened about 2 years later. I was home from school sick one day in my house is locked up by myself, heard a name loud and clear, very loud. And again, startled me, looked around, there was nobody there. So this kind of jump started me into, you know, wanting to learn a little bit about hauntings and psychic phenomenon and angels and spirit guides and all this stuff, because I wasn't sure whether to believe any of it, but I had an overwhelming interest in learning about this stuff. So, you know, as the years went on, my interest grew and grew. I didn't live in a haunted house. I'm not a psychic. I was never psychic back then. Wanted to figure out, did I have a psychic experience or a ghostly experience? So, you know, when you put all this stuff together, it just kind of built up inside of me, and I'm in my young 20s and really just want to start learning more and more. And I didn't know how to find, you know, a haunted house or a psychic medium at the time. We didn't have internet. We had a yellow, you know, a phone book with yellow pages in it. Looked in there, nothing about psychics. There was rumored that there was a haunting right down the road from my high school. And this was huge. This went national in the media. There was a family called the Smurls in, I think it was West Pittston, Exeter, Pennsylvania way. And the case ended up, you know, being turned into a full feature movie. There was books written about it. So, you know, that kind of piqued my interest in this. Well, maybe the stuff is real. So, you know, I'm in my young 20s looking for mediums and didn't know how to find any, looked around, couldn't find any. And just by synchronicity, coincidence, fate, whatever you want to call it, I happened to be scanning through the television one day and I came across something that caught my eye on MTV. And I probably hadn't watched MTV in maybe I don't know, 10 years. But something caught my eye, so I stopped. There was about maybe 30 seconds of whatever that was, went into a commercial. The very first commercial was for a metaphysical bookstore in Scranton City. And I thought, you know what, that's a great place to go look for a psychic. So I literally jumped in my car, and it was on a Monday. So I'm thinking, all right, at least I could find out if somebody there knows psychic medium. I wanted to study them, try them out. So drive down there, and as fate would have it, that day the store was closed. I'm like, you got to be kidding, on a Monday. So I got out of the car because there were posters all over the front window. And the first poster I saw was for psychic readings with this medium, and to call this phone number. So it was weird. It was just like, again, fate, maybe, I don't know, because like something caught my eye on MTV. I stopped, I watched it, and got guided to meet this psychic medium who blew me away every single reading I had. And that just propelled me even further.
There
That's
we go.
Yeah.
That sounds definitely like fate to
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Sorry, that was the long version, but
Yeah, no.
I get a little chatty.
Oh, both of us do. Another question. So kind of stemming off of, you said that you've had like your own kind of personal experiences. Have you had more intense kind of personal experiences besides just like feeling stuff or like hearing your name kind of thing?
Not before I got into doing this stuff. And in fact, when I first began working with psychics, and that was the first encounter ever I had with a psychic medium. And I didn't want to go into that experience giving any information. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I read a lot about mediums, and I just wanted to go and sit down and get a general reading. So, and I told the woman that, and she was fantastic. She never asked me a single question. She told me to bring a voice recorder. I brought a voice recorder. They had tape cassettes back at that time. So turned it on, and she just sat there and started giving me information, and it just absolutely blew me away with the accuracy. So like immediately I was convinced this woman had some level of ability, you know, beyond a normal person. So I started looking for more mediums. Then I wanted to test out more, and she had a rule that you couldn't come back within 3 months, because a lot of people become addicted to psychics, and then they want them to answer life questions for them. You know, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I get a divorce? Should I get married? That kind of stuff. So she doesn't want to get people, you know, addicted to her that way. But after a little while, she kind of knew that I was just testing her, and I wasn't asking any specific questions. She was okay with it, let me come in a lot more. And really, I just wanted to see what was possible between me, her, and the spirit world, you know. And I had like questions in my mind before I got there that I wanted answers to. 9 times out of 10, she was able to answer those for me before I even asked anything. And I always waited till the end. If she didn't get it, then I might ask. But 9 out of 10 times, she already answered what I wanted to know. So I kind of branched out from her to other mediums, and I found that they don't necessarily all work the same. They all have different levels of ability. Some, I don't want to say were complete frauds, but their info was just not matching up. So some are really bad at what they do. Others are just amazing. But I got to a point in time where I wanted then to go out and start maybe experiencing stuff, because with the psychic, I was having very good informational experiences, but nothing, no sensations, wasn't hearing anything, seeing anything. So I wanted to get into haunted locations. And I actually, the woman's name was Sue. I asked her first, what are your thoughts on paranormal teams? And she's like, don't get involved with them. I hate them. They're very disrespectful to spirit. And I'm like, wow, you know, she's been so accurate that I don't want to offend the spirit world, you know, so I stayed away from it for a little while. But then I thought, you know what, I consider myself a pretty decent guy, compassionate. I'm not going to go in there, you know, and try to, you know, make fun of spirits or, you know, get them angry or provoke them in any way. But I think I could logically study this without like kind of being a jerk. So that was my intent. So I kind of put aside what Sue had said. And again, talking to my wife about this, my father-in-law was sitting right next to us. He's like, hey, I work with the guy in a paranormal team. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So, you know, synchronicity number 2, he introduced us, and they put my wife and I on the team, and we were with them for about 2 years. And honestly, I did not experience almost anything in 2 years. The best that I could say is we got a couple of weird voices recorded, And I'm like, all right, we got some voices, but is that a ghost? I have no idea. So 2 years weren't very experiential for me, but one thing I learned, there were a lot of people that were sincerely scared and wanted whatever was in their house out of there. And I had worked with enough mediums at that time who told me that they can cleanse houses of, bothersome ghosts. So I thought, you know what, I really want to get away from this team who was very good technically at investigating, but had no resources to stop a haunting. So started my own team with my wife, which was the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. And oddly enough, there were 2 other state troopers I worked with who wanted in on it. I had a friend who was a university police officer, another local police officer who was a friend of mine, and 2 FBI agents. So that was sort of the start of our team, along with my wife. And in fact, after that point, we're talking about putting a couple more people on. She's like, please, no more cops. There's enough cops here, get normal people. So I said, all right, we'll see what we can do. And it was, I would say, even a couple more years before I actually started experiencing enough where I could say, okay, I got it now. I believe, there's definitely paranormal activity happens, something above the normal, but I do believe it's now because of ghosts. And that was probably a good, 5, 6, 7 year journey for me altogether. One thing after another fell into place. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So you kind of already answered how you always how you came to believe in the paranormal.
Yeah.
Do you have a most intense personal experience that got you to what was the first one that just snapped you into it?
There were a couple actually where they were a little bit on the freaky side. And I should say, I actually started out as I call myself an optimistic skeptic when I started. Really wanted this stuff to be true, but I just couldn't buy what I was seeing on TV, the movies and books.
Yep.
Had to experience it myself. So that's why I got into this. We had one case that just kind of blew me away. And in fact, it blew me away so much I wrote a book about it. It's called the Upper Darby Poltergeist. And poltergeist has a couple different meanings. Some people think of it as psychokinesis, where it's energy coming off of a living person, causing extreme activity in the house. Poltergeist, the classic definition of that, I guess, it's German, meaning noisy ghost. So the way we looked at that case is there was so much physical activity going on in the home. It just far outweighed any other case we ever worked. Most people report seeing things and hearing things. So it's maybe, I saw a dark shadow, saw something out of the corner of my eye. Maybe they actually see a ghost, or they hear things. They might hear words, voices, sometimes music, stuff like that. But rarely do they have physical things going on, or if they do, it's every once in a while. So this particular case was the exact opposite. There was a ton of physical stuff going on, and some reports of, seeing shadows or figures, maybe hearing something, but they had lights turning on and off. They had a ceiling fan that actually would move by itself every now and then, and it wasn't even hooked up to power. So that was a little freaky. And, we had to do some work there trying to, dismiss airflow and stuff like that might have started it. But even more significant, they had an electric keyboard that had keys that would light up when you would play it. So they were awoken one night to this thing going crazy, playing music, well, not music, but, notes, and went and looked at it. And the keys were going by itself. The lights were lighting up. And the weird part was it wasn't plugged in again. So it's another electrical thing going on that, was a little out of the ordinary. They had one of the most prevalent things, I think, was their kitchen cabinets were constantly coming open. The refrigerator came open, just like some scary movies. You have the refrigerators open and all this food scattered on the floor. Pots and pans would fall out of the cabinets. They had heavy dining room chairs that were placed very neatly on top of a dining room table. Probably the second main thing that was going on there, quarters being thrown all over the house, all times of the day. They don't know where they were coming from, but they'd hear them hit the walls, chairs, stuff like that. They'd go and look, they'd find quarters, they'd see quarters go flying. And the craziest thing that they reported was they had a couple-month-old baby in a bassinet in the master bedroom where the baby slept. They got the other kids ready for school and sent them off to school. The mom asked the dad, go up and check on the baby. Dad goes up and says, where's the baby? Where did you put her? And she's like, in the bassinet. And he's like, baby's not in the bassinet. Now this is a baby that can't even crawl yet. So they, of course, panic. They're going through the house, finally find the baby in a bedroom, like one door down on the second floor, underneath very neatly folded covers in a comforter. So I'm getting all these reports and, I'm saying, I'm not buying some of these. And when I talked to them on the phone, I didn't realize this. They were mad at me after we hung up. They said later, they told me they didn't think we were going to help them because I turned the interview more into an interrogation. They said, we knew you didn't believe us and we didn't think you were going to help, but we did. And we went down there and then started actually experiencing a lot of the stuff that they were talking about. Doors opening and closing, issues with the lights going on and off, quarters being thrown all over the place. We actually were able, I think 3 or 4 times to get that recorded on some cameras that we had going. Just insane amounts of noise with nobody in the house, toys turning on by themselves. This is stuff like, now us coming as outside independent, observers are witnessing all this stuff going on there. So it didn't take long before we knew that they weren't lying to us. I still have doubts about the baby and the heavy dining room chairs, but all the rest of the stuff we were starting to experience. And hands down, when we brought our psychic medium in, and she doesn't get any information on cases before we go, she started explaining to us what they were going through. The information lined up. She told us who she felt was there. She even got into a point in the case where she turns to me, the clients had left now, but she turns to me and said, did these folks ever do voodoo or have voodoo done to them? And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a far out question for like normal people. So I said, they didn't tell me that, but it's pretty significant. I'm sure they would have mentioned that. She goes, give them a call if you would and ask them that. And I'm like, man, this is like make or break the psychic time, because we have a husband who really didn't buy into all this stuff, even though he was experiencing it, but the wife was fully on board. So I'm thinking if the psychic's wrong, it's going to discredit her real quick. So I put in a phone call. The woman's name was Sharon. I said, weird question for you, Sharon. Did you guys do any voodoo in the house or have voodoo done to you? And she said, yeah, we think so. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And she said, it's very private. We didn't want to go into it. And I'm like, well, it's kind of important. And she wouldn't go into it with me, but she wanted to talk to Virginia, our psychic medium, when they got back to the house. And we found out they had a Santeria, very close to voodoo, done to the husband because of personal issues going on in his family, and it was a mess. But that validated Virginia for me like 100% too. Her info was dead on with what she was giving us. She pulled voodoo out of a hat and was pretty correct about that. And her information was lining up with the activity we were witnessing, and it was incredible. So that, I would have to say, completely solidified my mind of ghostly activity and hauntings and psychics.
Yeah.
Probably made the husband believe in it a little more too then.
By the time he was done with this went on for almost 2 years. He was kind of fully on board at the end.
I was gonna say, because if he's experiencing all that and then the psychic pulls that out and he doesn't believe it, I don't know what would make him ever believe.
Yeah. Plus he was from Italy, and she was giving personal information from him that tied into Italy that blew him away, and there was no way any of us would have even known that. So
That's crazy.
yeah, she's Virginia's fantastic. She'll come up with first and last names of deceased people sometimes.
Oh, really?
Place, and yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch her work.
Wow.
That's crazy. So another question for you. On the website, I know it says you are retired. So is this what you do kind of day to day now, or do you have like a job that you do and this is just kind of on the side?
Yeah, I do a few different things. I actually started doing this while I was working as a trooper. And I think because of the credibility of our teammates and word of mouth, it wasn't long. I mean, we grew fast as a team and constantly had backlogs of cases of people, again, just by word of mouth, hearing about our team and wanting help. And one of the big things that I think drew people to us is the word was getting out that we were stopping hauntings. So that's what a lot of people were looking for, where a lot of teams go out, they investigate, they get evidence, maybe kind of come up with somebody who they think is there, but quite often can't stop the haunting. So We were doing that. The word spread around real quick in our area, and we're from like right around the Scranton city area. So that's kind of a populated area around Scranton. And, you know, we grew really quick and just started getting a lot of cases, and that grew and grew and grew. And, you know, having the psychic was an extreme help too. And a lot of people don't like to investigate with psychics. They like the more scientific approach, which is great. That's how we started out until we found a medium we were comfortable in working with. But the problem is it won't always tell you who is there, why they're there in the first place, why the particular type of activity is happening. And it certainly can't necessarily get a ghost out of there. So we felt the best way moving forward was to team up with the medium. And we kind of did two, I don't want to say independent, almost codependent investigations. Virginia does her stuff and we did ours, working together, collecting physical information. Virginia would get the psychic stuff. We'd match it up with historical information we had from the clients and put that together as a package for people, and it just worked for us.
I feel like that's kind of, I think a reason that people don't believe in like psychics is I know that some people that claim they're psychics actually use like, I don't know what to call it. Like they use like the tells for when people talk.
Yeah, like body language
and body language and
yeah,
stuff
responses,
like that to see if they're getting something right or not. So I feel like a lot of people don't really trust it. Like I've wanted to go, but like I'm also like I don't want to go because I don't know if it's actually going to be right, even though I do believe in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's, you know, the only way that, you know, I tell people, there's a lot of people who ask me, you know, are psychics real and should I use one? How do I know how to find a good one? Really, you have to test them out. And that's exactly what I did. Any psychic our team has ever worked with, we tested out first, trying to have them do a cold reading on us to see what they get, you know, and there's a difference between psychics and psychic mediums. Yeah. So psychics can basically tell you a lot about yourself, what's going on in your life, maybe your past, a little bit about the future, you know, your occupation, love interest, your job, whatever. Mediums speak with dead people. So that's the difference. That's what we needed. So we had to test them out. So we tested them out, my wife and I, in the beginning, just by doing cold readings of us to see if they could connect with any of our loved ones, give us personal information. But then if they passed that, we actually took them out on cases to see how they would do there. And Virginia was the very first medium we ever worked with, and just absolutely, completely blew us away with the sheer amount of accurate information she was getting. Like I said, first and last names.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody can do that. And that's not always, but, you know, a lot of times she'll get a first name. Sometimes it might be just an initial, but then she'll get identifiers for it. So this is where it comes in, like, to your question a little bit, because I worked with a lot of guys and girls who did not believe this stuff. And, you know, I'm working with a bunch of troopers who thought I was nuts. I'm working with a psychic. They're very skeptical anyway. But I said, you have to go and experience it. That's the only way I can say, because not like any psychic or any person can really just say, hey, I'm picking up this person named George. Are you connected to somebody named George? Most people somehow or another probably could say yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, Virginia might go in and say, listen, I'm getting the name George here. He's telling me he's a mechanic. I feel like he died of a heart attack. He was in bed when he did that. You know, he used to wear, you know, Van Halen t-shirts all the time, you know, something like that. So not only is she like getting a name, but then she wants identifiers to point towards that person to kind of prove it to whoever we're speaking to and herself to make sure she's got the right person. So she comes up just with a lot of intimate, detailed information for people.
Actually, another thing that is happening to me, and I know Maddie's had some stuff at her house, but my current house, I moved in a couple years ago with my boyfriend, and they have like a boiler room in the other side of the basement because we live in the basement. We have our own apartment. I felt something because I've felt stuff before, but like I definitely felt something, and I told Maddie, I was like, something's here. And we used to have this glass door, and me and Maddie actually woke up in the middle of the night at the same time and looked immediately at the door at the same time. And we were both in a dead sleep. And we kind of looked at each other like, you felt that too, right? It's like, okay. One day, I don't know, I was in the bedroom by myself, and like, I kind of looked up and the name Samuel popped in my head. So I started calling him Samuel because it felt right. And me and Maddie actually used a Ouija board a couple weeks ago, like the week we started our channel. Because we're like, we'll try and contact stuff. We're always safe with it. And I asked the spirit, "What's your name?" And it spelt out Sam. And I was like, that kind of makes me feel like I was right then. Like, I know
Yeah.
stuff can like mess
Yeah.
with me and like act like it's something it's not, but I was like, I feel like it's right. And actually, we asked if there were more spirits than just him down here, and it said like there were 3. And I asked if one of them was a spirit from the Connecticut house, and it said yes. And it spelled
Yeah.
out initials, and the last initial matches up with the family that used to live there back in the 1700s.
And that's exactly how psychic information works a lot of times, psychic ability, where you'll just hear a name pop into your head. And, I think it was validated through the Ouija board for you there.
That's why when you
And,
said Virginia had like a name pop in her head, I was like, oh, that happened to me. I was like, wait a minute.
and people always question it. And we have clients that's happened to as well. And, one of the guys was kind of a skeptic, but he knew stuff was going on in the house. It believed in this happens a lot too, believed in hauntings, not in psychic ability. So he was a little weird about having a psychic come in. And I kind of give the same look that you just did too. I'm like, really? You believe in ghosts, but not psychics?
But not something else, okay.
He didn't believe in psychics. So he got a name that popped into his head. And one of the big indicators that he was looking for was when Virginia comes in, is she going to get the name? And she did. And not only that, this house was it was about 300 years old. And they had a deed going all the way back to the original property owners. And I mean, it had tons and tons of names in there, but Virginia came up with the first and last name. And they went through the deed book and found the name in there. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, so it validated the psychic stuff for him as well.
Yeah.
Which I love because one thing that always happens on our cases, Virginia will start getting a lot of personal information for somebody there, if not a couple of people. And a lot of people might be unsure on mediums. So if they just come in your house and they're giving information on the haunting, they might not know some of the names that she comes up with, where they're like, all right, I got to take her word for it that this is what's going on. But when she starts giving them very personal information and she's correct on it, even with first and last names and stuff that's like so private that like she won't be able to gain anywhere, like from the internet or, talking to anybody that was related to the team or whatever. That sort of validates and qualifies her as being legit. And then they better accept her information on the haunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can mention something about Ouija boards if you like. I always like to throw out little warnings.
Any tips?
Ouija boards. What's that?
Just give us any like tips on like equipment.
Since you mentioned that, yeah, we have a lot of people who use Ouija boards who then get all kinds of problems from using it. And so I often give some tips on if you're going to use it, what to do, and the most common mistake people make that get them in trouble. Number one, I have to throw this out because this was a real life story. Don't use a Ouija board in a closet that have clothes hanging in it and use candles in the closet.
I will never.
Right? I had a waitress come to me one time that knew I did this stuff and said, hey, I bought my daughter a Ouija board. I got a question if she's like using it right or should be doing this. I heard they're bad. And I'm like, what are they doing? She's like, well, she goes in her closet with her friends. They light some candles. And I'm like, stop right there.
That is just a fire hazard.
Yeah. I said, there's a bigger problem than using the Ouija board.
On the floor.
You're burning candles in a closet in a house. So don't do that. Tip number one.
Tip number one, don't.
But most people kind of like open a session and close it down incorrectly. And they have just a very general open idea of like calling on spirit. They don't have a particular reason for doing it. Just maybe to find out who's there. And I know people that have used Ouija boards, for 20, 30 years and have not had one single problem. I know other people that used it a couple times, and normal people with no psychic ability whatsoever could get away with using it for a while. But it only takes one night where you have somebody who's psychically open enough and a spirit that's present to know that, to make the connection. And when you just kind of generally open up a session indiscriminately, just trying to connect with something, you're opening up a forum for anybody to come through. And that's the problem most people run into. You don't necessarily have to be religious, but, you could just say, to the universe, hey, You know, protect us from any negative entities that might be out there. You know, surround us in protective white light.
That's
You
exactly what my mom told us like a
Yeah.
week ago. Because she's really into this stuff, like I said, so she's been doing it a while. So she's always like checking up on us, and like she, I think, has psychic feelings sometimes, and it kind of freaks Maddie out a little bit because like Maddie's been feeling stuff at our house in like one of the corners of our house. Her dog barks at it. And my mom all of a sudden the other day was like, "Are you guys doing okay? Like, is something happening like paranormal wise with you guys?" I was like, "How'd you know?" First off,
Maybe.
it's like, what are you talking about? But she's always kind of been that person that I go to. And when we were in the Connecticut house, like she helped me understand how to protect myself. And it was always imagine yourself in a bright white light, and it will not protect you unless you actually believe it is protecting you.
Yeah, and not, you know, like we always tell people, and we do this on cases too when we're doing a lot of our cleansing work, and there's stuff we call psychic self-protection techniques. That's for everybody, even if you're psychic or not. It's more of an intentional visualization type of stuff. So before we go into a house, and I recommend this for people who do work with the Ouija board as well, just envision yourself in a bright white golden bubble of light, or inside like an egg, or whatever your mind creates. That's the right thing. Some people go as far as to even put like a mirrored glazing on the outside. So anything that's of a negative energy tries to get in there, it reflects that energy back. But you have to have the intent and the emotion behind it, that's a protective bubble. And even when people do saging, that's the part they miss. You have to have the intent and like the emotional belief into it for that to work. Because a lot of people do saging and it just doesn't work. But you know, have an intent for using the Ouija board. I mean, if your intent is just to connect with whoever's there, that might happen, but you might get good or you might get bad. You just don't know. Once you have one connection, usually that opens it up where more spirits are going to try to get in there and connect, because that's what you're making, a forum for spirits to come and connect, good and bad. So you got to protect yourself. You got to have the intent. You only want to connect with, you know, energy of the light, you know, or, you know, there's people who want to connect with bad people too. Like they've heard somebody murdered somebody or killed themselves in a house, and they want to use a Ouija board to try to connect with that person. And then sometimes they get that, and then they call us and say, well, we want them out of here. We're like, why? You wanted to connect with them. You got them. Now you want them out? Like, I don't get it. But now they're scared and worried and having issues. And spirits come with all kinds of problems sometimes. Not all of them, but some of them. And one of the biggest things that happens, they might not even know they have somebody there, but all of a sudden maybe one person, and that would probably be the person who is most psychically opened, if even just a little bit, they start getting all kinds of like emotional and even physical issues. Like depression might set in, anxiety, they might feel suicidal. And you know, we just got a case request last week where this girlfriend's boyfriend, who was 19 years old, was using a Ouija board with his friends. They were kind of just playing around with it, making fun of it. And she said this kid, who was such a nice, compassionate kid, now is talking about suicide. He's having thoughts of stabbing her and killing people, and very homicidal thoughts. So they have no other activity going around, you know, no physical stuff, but this kid changed since
he opened up that connection.
Yeah. So, I mean, they are legit. Again, people could go, like I said, 10 years and not have any experiences with them really, or maybe just, you know, they might come up with names or something on there, but you know, you have the right person on the right night who's open enough to connect with something that just might be even transient coming through there, and then you got a problem. So again, you have to, you know, do some prayers, do some visualization protection techniques, have the intent of like one single person, but the other intent of nothing else is going to come in. And then you got to kind of do the opposite at the end of the night. We do this on cases as well. We call it closing down, where Virginia, our medium, does some personal stuff herself as a medium, but like for the rest of us, we'll imagine cables or cords or whatever you want to call it, strings even, whatever your mind creates coming off of you, and the intent is they're connected to the location. So we cut those strings, you know, above our head, each side, under our feet. You're cutting the energy of the location you're at. You want to do that with a Ouija board too. You know, imagine cables, you know, connected, you know, could be energetic little strings or whatever, something connecting you to the board, cut yourself from that, above your head, below, sides, and do some other prayers and say, whatever is here with the board stays with the board, and remove it from the house. You could ask, again, you don't even have to really believe them, just as a precaution, ask angels to come in and remove anything that might be there that doesn't belong there,
I
stuff
think
like
me
that.
and
Close
Maddie
it down.
actually had a recent experience when we did do the board in my house. The third person with our channel, who I think he's at work right now, so he couldn't be here, is actually Maddie's cousin Jesse, and they used the Ouija board together, and they talked to his grandfather? His grandfather, and and we could tell because it definitely was telling him stuff that only him and his grandpa knew.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh God, kind of thing. That made me definitely believe that I have people who are in the afterlife, but are protecting us, kind of thing, which makes me feel a little safer. Even though I take all the precautions I can, it makes me feel safe knowing that someone's kind of behind me, making sure that I'm okay.
And, I have a friend who, they don't call it a Ouija board, they call it an angel board. A lot of people refer to it as that. It's got kind of different pictures and stuff on there. There's angels on the board itself. And so they open up their session with only connecting with angels or, beings from a higher vibrational level or of the light or something like that. And, when I reference people doing it for 20, 30 years, that's what I'm talking about. They connect with family members who have died, crossed over properly. They're, if you want to call it heaven or wherever, they're from a very high vibrational, level.
Yeah.
They're not going to cause you harm. It's going to be more of a loving type of energy. They'll connect with you too, but you're not going to run into any trouble that way.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds good. Do you have any other tips for us, equipment wise, or any other ways that we could contact spirits? Because really all we have right now is the Ouija board, and I've been looking into using my pendulum again, if you know what that is.
Yeah. Pendulums are really good for getting yes and no answers. You can set it up where, spins to the left for yes, for the right for no, or however you do it.
My mom had me buy one when I was about, I think it was after we actually moved out of the Connecticut house. We went to this little spirits shop kind of thing in the Warwick Mall, and she's pick one that kind of calls out to you, because that's the one that you will use, and I use it a lot actually.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe in it. She's use it to try and find something, and I use it and it works, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah,
it's really pretty cool how some of them work. We actually did it was kind of a mock investigation for a communications department for a university near us who wanted to do a little Halloween special for a little show they did for their school. And we went to the Houdini Museum in Scranton, and there was a rack in there full of pendulums for sale. And, I heard something in this back corner when we first walked in. It was all this noise, but there was nobody there. The lights were off. I took a walk back there. I didn't see anything moving, but, as I'm walking towards the back of the building, it would have been on the back right-hand side in the dark. There's nobody there, but all this noise, and couldn't figure out what it was. So while we were kind of explaining to this class what we were doing, and how we start our investigations and stuff, I thought, what, I'm going to put a camera in that corner just in case, we catch anything. So as we're going through explaining how we do cases, just as an example, I said, hey, somebody made some noise in this corner back here before. I said, if there's anybody here that did that before, can you do it again? And I think it was 30 seconds. This rack full of pendulums just starts shaking on a table. And I'm like, that's the noise I heard. That was it. So it was pretty wild. But yeah, pendulums, are very good. I would say if you have an encounter that you feel wasn't quite right, or, something bad might have been there, cleanse it afterwards.
Yes.
You might have your own techniques. One simple one is let it sit in the sun. That's a great one, but I know there's a lot of cleansing techniques.
I kind of do what my mom taught me to do with the tarot cards that I think it was my great-grandmother used to do. I actually have my great-grandmother's silk scarf, and I wrap the tarot cards in that, and if I feel anything with the pendulum, I tend to put it in that, because to me that feels protective, so I put it in there with those.
It sounds like mom's a good reference to go to for questions.
Me and Maddie go to mom a lot. I love my mother.
Yep. Now, I again would kind of warn about doing stuff in your own homes. A lot of people do it because they watch all these TV shows and they just want to try to connect with somebody. But if you're using any kind of apps on a phone, if you're using like an EMF meter, a voice recorder, anything like that is identical to using a Ouija board, because your intent is to open up a forum for ghosts to connect, and you're going to get good or the bad. So if you do that, you know, I kind of advise against doing it in your own home. You ever heard of law of attraction? I believe that works. The more you concentrate on something, more likely you are to manifest it. So I think just by putting that intent out there can draw stuff toward you. So you got to be careful what your intent is. You know, do the recordings and stuff somewhere else. Maybe not somebody else's house, but you know, museum like you go to, you know, perfect. But again, if you do it in your own house, have that intent, use some protective ideas and stuff like that. But you know, I think the biggest thing that we actually get any kind of evidence on is voice recorders. You know, and there's so many different types out there. You know, a lot of people like the older ones that have a lot of natural hiss in there, and they call it white noise, and they feel that, you know, they work a little bit better. You know, a lot of people think that white noise helps like imprint or embed a voice in it, but it might be something technical too. The older recorders have a lot less like magnetic shielding around the processors in there, which that might be the reason that voices are getting imprinted on there, because they started using that stuff to you know, get clearer sounding recordings, so you're not getting all these different kinds of electromagnetic noises coming in. So if you know, you walk by a microphone or an electrical outlet, they'll hum. Sometimes you pick that up. So they have this magnetic shielding on there now. So a lot of the older recorders tend to pick up stuff a little bit better, but then you could get high-tech recorders and, you know, get very good clarity. One thing that I always recommend, always carry two and try to keep them a little bit separate from each other. And the reason being, if you get true voices recorded, and you might not hear them at the time, but a lot of times you might get real clear voices on one recorder and nothing at all on the other one, but they're so loud that it should have recorded on both. So it's a good way of verifying that you're getting, you know, quality EVPs. Really. And some people like camcorders. I like camcorders along with voice recorders because you're also getting a visual image of kind of what's going on in a room, and you can use that as a control device to look back later. If a voice comes on the recorder, you could go and check camcorders to see if it pops on that. A lot of times we'll get, in some larger buildings, we'll get footsteps recorded. So we use camcorders for that too. We can actually tell if we have a team of two, were they walking at the time? Were they standing still? You know, hopefully, you know, did somebody have hard-soled shoes on? And usually you can tell, you know, by memory, whether you're wearing sneakers at night or boots or whatever. But, you know, it's just another control device just to, you know, help rule things out or qualify things. So, you know, that's, you know, the big thing I would say is the voice recorders. You're going to get your biggest amount of evidence with that. Pendulums are great. A lot of people like to use dowsing rods. You know, they work fantastic even for water companies looking for water. They do work. Same thing happens with energy inside a home. But for me, I find them just a little bit hard to use where you know that you're not kind of, you know, unknowingly moving your hand a little bit and, you know, the rod is swinging. So I don't know. You have to use it for a while, practice with it.
Skeptic of the dowsing rods because I don't have that steady of a hand. That's why even with the pendulum, the only reason I believe in it is because I stay as still as I can and I'll tell that my hand is shaking, but not enough to make it like go in a circle as hard as it is.
So I even went a step further with the rods. I got a board and drilled some holes in it and I slid them down in there. And so they were free swinging, and I thought, what a great way to test them. And we've taken them on a lot of cases and they've done absolutely nothing. So some, you know, psychic people, and they're like, you know what, I think they actually have to sort of manipulate the bot, you know, your body's energy to help them move too. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm really getting into all that, you know, but just in the boards, they did not work for me at all. So
yeah,
I don't know. And we don't use them. Honestly, our medium will use a pendulum a lot. Dowsing rods, we don't really use too much. If we do, I think it's just kind of test them out, play with them a little bit. But to me, it's, again, that you have that little I don't want to say people are manipulating them, but just a small body movement, even though you might not realize you're doing
'Cause
it.
they are a little looser than like a pendulum or like
Yeah.
a board, obviously. So like I feel like they kind of would move easier than
Yeah, they're a little hard to control sometimes. So
yeah.
just and that's just me. Some people love them. I just I want something a little bit more solid as far as evidence goes.
Yep.
But and again, you could use them with other stuff too, though. And if everything matches up, you know, then that's a help. A lot of people use the magnetic field detectors, EMF meters, and they're good for going through a place to see if you have any natural, it's usually like man-made actually, fields in there. Anything that electricity flows through causes these fields. And you get a lot of false positives from people feeling stuff with that. So a lot of times, like especially in basements, people go downstairs to do laundry, let's say, and they'll say, I'm doing laundry and I feel like somebody's standing right there with me. And there's a fluorescent light right above their head, which has a lot of these fields coming from them. So, you know, we try a little experiment and I tell them, if you feel that, have somebody kill the lights down there while you're standing there and see if that goes away, because instantly you'll know the difference.
Yep.
So those fields will make you, it's like putting two magnets together that are opposing. You could feel there's a push in between them. You know, so you get some of these high fields, people have their own electrical field, and there's that feeling of those two fields touching. So a lot of people can feel that, but the meters are good once you kind of rule that stuff out. One thing I'll say about them though, a lot of times when you have a spirit present, they will react. You'll get like some spikes in these EMF fields. From working with a medium, I've kind of come to my own conclusion that they won't work just because you have a spirit present. When they do seem to work is when you have a spirit present that is going to do something. So you'll get like an audible voice, a door will move, the lights will flicker, something has to manifest.
That spirit kind of like putting their energy more towards something kind of thing.
I don't even know if it's putting it towards it or if it's spontaneous, but definitely putting it towards it. If they're trying to, like, say, manifest so you could see them, or if they're going to try to, like, let's say, knock something off of a table just to get your attention. So generally, what we find when something physical happens, we do get these spikes. But more times than not, our medium will say, hey, we just had a ghost, a man or woman come into the room, and absolutely nothing is going on. And I've even gotten so far as to say, hey, you're talking with them? Yes. Tell them to come over here and see if they'll help us out here, play with our devices. Will they do anything? And in a lot of cases, they can't make anything happen. So I've also come to the conclusion that it's almost like the movie Ghost. Have you seen that?
That's what I was going to bring up. That's what comes to my mind with like the energy getting focused into something is him trying to kick the soda can or flick it.
Yes, I believe that myself wholeheartedly because, again, working with the medium who claims that the spirit comes into a room so many times and we can't get anything to happen, no measurements, devices don't work. I think it's a small percentage of spirits that can actually physically manipulate stuff. And I'd have to say, like a lot of people, there's a big question out there, not a question, a statement almost. Do you know how much energy it must take to like throw that glass across the room? No, I don't really. The same amount it was to move that weight and mass across the room, you know, with some type of energy. That's how much. But to me, it's not that they have to use a lot of energy. They have to focus energy. I think there's, you know, the energy is in the environment. It's here. They just have to focus that energy to make it move.
Yeah.
And I don't think all ghosts can do that.
Yeah, probably. Just like with the door slamming, they definitely had to like, because in the video, you can see a shadow at the top of the stairs. Like real quick before the door slams, but that it slammed hard. So like,
and see that's a good example. And I think, you know, if you had some meters with you, they might have reacted at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of get that from a personal experience as well. I was in this, my team was invited into this really old hospital and it was big in the middle of nowhere. And myself and another guy were walking down a hallway on the second floor and this place has no electricity at all. So the meters shouldn't be going off at all because there's nothing to pick up. And we were just casually walking down the hallway and plain as day, I heard a woman's voice inside one of the patient rooms there. So we walked in and, you know, I said, Paul, come on in. I just heard somebody speaking in here. And we walked in and there's nobody there, of course, and we didn't expect there to be, but stayed in there for a while, absolutely nothing happening. came back out into the hallway, and we were approaching a set of double doors that are fire doors that were propped open. They had little wedges under them. And, you know, people are familiar with like the little push bar. So if the doors were shut, you'd have to run up, hit the push bar to open them up. But they were wedged open. So we just walked out of the room, taking a few steps forward, walking towards those doors that were open, and the meter started going crazy, and one of the doors slammed shut. So there we had a physical like manifestation of something. There was something moving, and the meter went off just prior to it. So
Yeah.
put those two together, that's the type of evidence I like. You have something physical happening with meter backing it up. But you know, in most cases, when spirits are in the room, according to our medium, our stuff's not doing anything.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions, Maddie?
I had one. Oh yeah. What have been like some of your most effective ways to get in contact? Like, did you use anything in the beginning? Did you just walk down and like start talking? Like, what have been your most effective ways to like actually get your results?
You know, as strange as this sounds, going in and trying to communicate with somebody and then completely ignoring them and having a casual conversation. And it's almost like it draws them closer because either you're not paying attention or looking for them, or they're trying to tell you something, but they're not communicating, or you're not communicating with them. And, you know, we seem to get some reactions that way. By far, the easiest way is to bring in a good psychic medium who could tell you exactly. And that's one of the things for a few years that we always wondered, are we going to get less physical responses when we have her there? Because like, why do stuff if they could speak directly with her?
Yeah.
You know, why would they like set off our meters if they could go directly to her? But so far, I mean, 15 years of doing this, 10 years working with her, I haven't really found a correlation that bringing her makes it better or worse for physical stuff to happen. And funny enough, as a psychic medium, she loves to see the physical stuff happen too, because it doesn't happen for physical or for mediums, you know, just because they're a medium.
Yeah.
So like if a door slams or a light turns on and off on command, you know, she loves that stuff because she doesn't get to see that all the time. Just has somebody like chirping in her ear. But I don't know. We unfortunately haven't found a great way. You know, number one, it depends on whether you have somebody who even knows you're there. Because I think a lot of ghosts just are going about their day, doing their thing and not even paying any attention to you. If someone is there, it depends on whether you have a willing participant too. Maybe they, you know, don't want to communicate with you at all, or they even try to hide. A lot of the clients, especially with us, talk about us coming and hopefully stopping the activity so they have a good idea why we're there. Where if you go into like a place where like ghost hunters go in just to try to experience stuff and document stuff, you might have a lot more luck communicating with them because they know that they're there just to have experiences. And, you know, usually you have a willing participant on the other side if they want to startle or see a door shut or something. You know, you have a little bit better luck that way. You know, I don't know. There's no really great way to get them to do stuff. I know a lot of people like to provoke, try to get them angry to do stuff. I kind of have a little problem with that, depending on where you're going. If you go into somebody's house, or like, let's say it was an insane asylum, or, you know, a school for boys or something like that, you know, for troubled youth, you don't know who is there 100% for sure that you're provoking. You know, if that was my grandmother who was stuck because of some kind of like psychological issue, you know, I don't know if I'd want people coming in there provoking and trying to agitate them.
Yeah.
So everybody's a little different. You know, our whole team just tries to be a little more respectful. Their ghosts are there because they're stuck for some reason. It's usually psychological, traumatic, emotional, something's holding them there. So we try not to taunt them. Now, if you go into a jail, you know, you're dealing with some bad people there. I don't know if you'd want to provoke them anyway, but people look at that different. Do they deserve it? Don't they? I don't know. I still don't like to think they deserve it. But one issue with that too is that, you know, unless you have the resources to get rid of them afterwards, we've had complaints where teams have come in, done a lot of provoking, collected evidence, and left. And they left with leaving that ghost there who's now fired up, and they're going to take it out on the people who still live there.
Yeah.
So we try not to provoke, but you know, I don't know, it's trial and error because, you know, just you got to look at them as people without a body now. They're just still the same person with their same personality. So, you know, what works for one person doesn't work for the next. And, you know, somebody might have a ghost that's lonely and just loves to talk to people. You get all kinds of activity. Going to the next house, you got somebody who's just ornery and wants to be left alone. You know, they might just go and not communicate at all, or they might throw stuff at you. You know, you just don't know.
Yeah, that kind of lines up with like stuff that me and Maddie have gone through, where we're like, we try to do different things to try and like catch something on tape, maybe a voice or just anything. And like anytime something has happened besides the door at the mansion slamming, it's always something happens beforehand and we don't catch it. Like we went to the Jamestown forts and we were trying to take a picture and none of us were recording at the time, and we heard a little girl in a different room say hi, and we were the only people there. And then her cousin Jesse threw a can down the length of a downward ramp, and the can started rolling back at him up the ramp, which is just weird in general. And then we went to it was an old hospital in Mansfield, Connecticut. And part of it's actually college, like part of, I think, UConn now.
Yes.
And, we were in the first building we went into, and my phone was at 45%, which is what we record on. My phone shut down all of a sudden, and we had only been recording for like 5-10 minutes. And as soon as my phone shut down, a door up on the 3rd floor slammed shut.
Yeah.
And we were like, of course, of course.
And you know what? One of the things that's so simple and easy to use, because we've had the same experiences with battery drain on a lot of equipment. That's one big thing that does happen a lot. They make battery meters. And, you know, if you don't mind buying some batteries now and then, go out and buy a battery meter and take it with you. And you can sit and watch that meter and see if there's any rapid drain of the batteries while you're in a building. That's so easy. And I try to get things that would be like easily manipulated by a spirit that doesn't have any physical properties to make things happen. So I try to make it as easy as possible. One of the things, we haven't had any luck with it at all, but you never know the day you might, but like a gram scale, something that you could get very minute readings on, set it up and just say, hey, if you're here, can you come and push on this plate and see if the numbers will go up? Easy things like that. One of the things that I could say is if we know that there might be children at a place, a lot of people will claim, parents usually say, I think something's playing with my son or my daughter. They say that they have somebody here. Toys, if you could get like toys or even the meters with lights on, something that kids will look at as a toy, that's very helpful too. So like if you get a EMF meter, K2, a lot of people know what a K2 is. It's got lights on there.
Yeah.
Or just another one that might light up and buzz at the same time, make some kind of toy. So stuff like that, you want to, you know, just invite kids. If there's a kid here, we brought these toys for you to play with. So we've had some luck in that respect too.
Which kind of like, so I have the belief like when kids have imaginary friends when they're younger, that's kind of them. It could be just an imaginary friend, but it could be them seeing somebody.
You know, we found a lot, like a variety of different things when that happens. Some of them are mediums claim are spirit guides, which for people who don't know what that is, unlike an angel is believed to be, you know, from a heavenly realm. They never incarnated into a human body, but they do come into our lives to help us with certain things. Spirit guides are people who lived, they died, and as part of their job, if you know you want to call it that, on the other side, they come back to help us as well. So, and you know, from what I'm told, mediums say that you might have a guide that's with you your whole life, but you might have others that come and go. It might be a couple days, couple weeks. Let's say you're a surgeon that has a a very tough surgery coming up. A spirit guide of a surgeon might pop in just to give them some insight, guidance, you know. So we found that kids really connect with spirit guides a lot. That's one of the things that we find. They don't necessarily have to show up in an adult form. They could be like an adult, age spirit, if I could put it that way, but they might appear as a child to the other child. Sometimes it's angels that the kids are picking up and don't really know how to articulate what they're seeing. Sometimes they're ghosts, some good, some bad. We had a wild case, which kind of blew me away, the way this child was acting, this ghost child. The only thing they were reporting in this house was seeing a little child there, and the daughter was interacting with it and giving a lot of information. She said she could speak to the little girl, said that she could describe her, and said that she was hurt and by herself basically. But she wasn't disfigured or anything like that, but she got hurt, and that's why she's still there. So when we brought our medium in, she picked up a little girl right off the bat. She felt that she was killed out on the highway like years ago when there were like carts, like horse and buggy type of stuff, that she was run over and killed and just stayed there for whatever reason. The thing I found fascinating was we were in the bedrooms, myself and our medium in the bedroom of the client's daughter. And I said something, we had some meters on the bed. I said, hey, can you do something with our meters? I said, can you come up here and jump on the bed? And my medium said, I'm seeing this, she's doing this. She's saying, no, no, no. I'm not allowed to jump on the bed here. I'm like, oh, that's an odd statement.
Right.
So at the end of the night, she cleared out this little girl, no problem. But at the end of the night, while we're kind of talking to the client about what we came up with, I said, hey, I said, we had kind of like a weird statement from this girl. I said, I asked her to jump on the bed, and she was telling our medium, no, they're not allowed to jump on the bed here. And the lady like looking at me like, holy cow, she turned pale. She said, my daughter was jumping on the bed when she was like 3, and she fell off and cut her head right open. And I don't know if it knocked her out, but it was really severe. She had to take her to the hospital. And she goes, since then, I don't allow the kids to jump on the bed here at all. And I'm like, no kidding. I said, this little ghost of a girl was actually listening to the rules that mom set in the house. I found that to be amazing. Thanks for your interest.
Of course.
I can tell you, if there's anybody that comes across your video that wants to check out more about what we do, or some evidence or cases we went through, just go on the internet and search for the Pennsylvania Paranormal
URL.
Yep.
I have the link saved, so
Yep.
I sent it to a lot of people.
Awesome. Yeah, you can check out a lot of other stories of things that people went through. And, we kind of started a little network that for people who are having a real hard time dealing with this stuff. I have some former clients that actually will jump on the phone and share their stories as well. It's a little network of, helping each other. So.
All right.